Hey, travelers, it's Sparks Valentine here with
Erica Nerdy Yogi.
and
And Foxfires.
and welcome to Dice and Dish, the tabletop RPG roundtable discussion podcast, where the three of us are going along on travels, talking about three different topics every episode, and meet some interesting adventures along the way that we bring into our silly discussions. So we really hope that you enjoy the episode and that you continue along the travel with us. So I guess we'll see you along the road. All right, Erica, go ahead and roll that dice.
It's a 1. Okay.
So, Ashley, that's your topic.
That is my topic, which is ironic because we just started talking about it a little bit before we started recording. So my topic is DMPCs. Are they good? Are they bad? What are your thoughts? So I'm going to start off by saying my thoughts are probably a little controversial. I don't think DMPCs are necessarily bad. I think that if they're done right, they can be really fun and enjoyable. And I say that because one of my early D&D experiences as a player was in a campaign where the DM gave us several NPCs that he played throughout the course of it. And all of those NPCs were treated as just kind of background characters unless we were in combat and needed help. Then they would step up and help us out. Or they were there to be exposition or just kind of hanging out with us. And he never put them in the spotlight more than the players, or tried very hard not to. And they were all very much loved by all of us that were playing. To the point where one of them is in literally anything I ever do because I loved that character. My cat's even named after him. And that's a situation where DMPCs are done well, where the DM balances them being able to play their character and actually running the game without overshadowing the players. Now, with that being said, I know there are horror stories of DMs who just throw in this level 20 character who is so much more powerful than the party, and it's all about that character. That is not the way to do it. Anybody who's listening, that is not the way to do it. As another example, I'm about to be doing, or by the time of this being released, I'm probably already doing it. Playing a campaign with some friends, and in that campaign,
Where are you playing? Plug it. Go ahead. Do it.
Okay, plug it. We are playing it on Twitch, on Kisser's channel. Link in the description. And the DM is actually inserting her own character because, first off, there's only 2 players, and second off, because she finds it fun, and we find it fun. But again, that character is not going to be overshadowing the rest of us. They are just going to be a part of the story. So, those are my thoughts. Erica, what are your thoughts?
So, I'm glad you touched on, like, if you're low on players, that sometimes, if needed, the DM could have a PC for it gives the third person really to role play with. And I agree that if you do the OP thing, it's like, well, they're 5 levels above you and they can one-shot the boss, but they're just there for support. What's the point of the party being there? I think that they could be, like you were talking about, if you have one that is, like a quest giver that is almost, I will use, like Gilmore from, Vox Machina season 1, and I think he appears in the other ones too. But anyways, So if you have someone like Gilmore who's a very loved NPC, and it's like, okay, then if the DM steps into their shoes for a combat, but doesn't make them so overpowered that they don't overshadow the players, but you use them as a almost like a turning point or a catalyst, or something happens to them, right? They get captured, they get teleported to a different plane of existence, and almost using the love that has been generated between the relationship as a something for them to go and do. We have to save this person that we have bonded with. And then the DM kind of steps back while they go and they try and save that person. I think that is a good use of it. If you can use it like that, if you build that relationship slowly, they step in for maybe a combat or two and you use them in other ways. Not as like they're always there. I get if you're in the situation y'all are in for stream and there's two players, then you probably do want a DM PC, but you never want the DM PC to be the main focus, because that's not really, in my opinion, it's not the DM's job for their player to be the main focus. Their job is to make sure the players feel like their characters are the main focus. So I feel like that is something that you kind of have to keep yourself in check about and be aware of, because I have been in a game where people have thrown a DM through in a PC and it's like, well, why are we even here? Like, we couldn't do anything and the PC could do everything. And it was like, there's no reason for us to even help this person. Why would they ask us for help? And I think that's an important question that you as the DM should have an answer to. Why are they there? How do they help the party? How do they drive the narrative? You know, the biggest thing is answering why. What is their purpose? How do they serve the story? If there is no answer to it and it's like, well, I just want to play and be in the spotlight for a little while. You are in the spotlight. You're the DM. Like,
Exactly.
so I think just being mindful of, you know, keeping yourself in check and just making sure you as the DM aren't stepping on players' toes. And if you're a player and you're playing with someone who is a DM who's using them, and you as a group feel like your toes are being stepped on and you're wondering, why are we as players here? You might want to try in a very, you know, non-confrontational way, be like, hey, we feel like your PC is the main focus of the story and we're not getting much as players. Like, you're not giving us much to work with here, and just kind of checking your DM if they need to be checked in a nice way. So as what I think. Because I know, like, one of our topics I feel like really goes hand in hand with this in
It
a
does.
way. I feel like the topic we might talk about next or whenever later on in the podcast probably is the better way to run a DM helper, I guess you would say. But that's my opinion. Sparks?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you, Erica, where I feel like there's a time and a place that like a DMPC would be like used and helpful. Like, mainly if it is like, you know, your one-offs, like they're the quest giver, they need help, they go with them. Or even just kind of if you need, like, if the DM feels like they're needed in this like scene, like in this like scenario. But being mindful is honestly going to be kind of your best play with that, having a PC, like a DM PC. I feel like, and I don't know if you would consider this like a DM PC or not, but when in like C2, like when Molly Mock died. Spoiler, it came out like 3 years ago, but like,
Oh,
you know,
It's longer than that, wasn't
was it 3 or 4
Yeah.
C2?
It was longer than that.
Well, when Molly Mock became the big bad of C2, like Matt took the role of playing him, and he kind of played him kind of like, I would say a PC would play an evil character. Like, and the way that he did it, it was just so natural. And he fully, like, yes, he, like, Lucian was kind of the spotlight of the game because he was the big bad. But I feel like the way that Matt played him, the way that he ran him, he still gave everybody else time for a spotlight. And it kind of, you see that with a lot of his NPCs that are like major important focuses in his games, especially like Pumont Sol in C2. He was a very heavy hitter NPC that I feel like they went back to every time, and he kind of ended up being the Gilmore of C2 for Mighty 9, like how Gilmore was for Vox Machina. So I think it just depends. Like, depends on the character and depends on what their use is. Like, in all honesty.
So because it is one of those things that I'm just kind of wondering, where do y'all draw the line of, like, you're talking about Molly Mock becomes the big bad of the campaign. I never viewed him as Matt's PC to play. I viewed him as an NPC, as a villain. So where is the line between a DM's PC and an NPC?
So, me personally, when you say DMPC, I think of a character who is always with the party. Like, they do not leave at all. I view, if they leave the party, that they are a sidekick when they are with the party. But if they are constantly with the party, that they are literally a part of the party, they are a DMPC. Which, again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So, in all honesty, as an example, Erica, me personally, by my definition, I would have considered Sheila a DMPC. And
she was, I mean, technically she was a sidekick. Under the 5e rules is like how we used her to build her. That way she wasn't OP.
I'm just saying, by my personal interpretation of what a DMPC is, she would have fallen under that category because she was always with us. Now, with that being said, you did not play her like what a bad DMPC would be. You played her to be there if we needed her. She was there, and then in combat she took sidekick roles. And that did not take anything away from the players. You didn't take our agency, and you did not take the spotlight. You just gave us a helper that was there, and we could talk to her. One of our party members even had a relationship with her. But she was always there. And that's what I think a DMPC is. A character who's just always there for one reason or another. And again, it can be done right, like Sheila. And it can be done wrong, like the horror stories you can find littered all over Reddit.
Do y'all want me to roll the die, or does anybody have anything else they want to say?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, it works out because now we're going to talk about Sparks' topic, which goes hand in hand with this.
It kind of goes really well. I know. I was like, we don't even have to really roll the dice. We should just go into the next topic, but it's okay.
That's how the podcast works.
You know what? The dice
it is technically how the podcast works, but if the topics kind of make sense together, I feel like the rules can be fudged like people do with their dice. So I chose this topic and I was kind of excited. And then we had, Fox's topic. And I was like, oh, well, those kind of go in hand. Really, all the topics tonight kind of go really hand in hand together. It's because it's mainly DMs running them. So my topic was thoughts on sidekicks. Like, what are your thoughts on just kind of the party having a sidekick, the like, how do you view sidekicks kind of in your things? I love the idea of a sidekick. I feel like they're really good at kind of like filling a role if your party is missing something. So it kind of, if you have players that like have already created their characters, they get together and then there's like, oh well shit, we don't have like, a healer, like how we were in Erica's game. Like we got a sidekick, her name was Sheila, and she was a healer, so she had all of our healing spells. So it's kind of like I see them as more of a thing to feel something that's missing from a party, other than it's just like we're just gonna have a sidekick because we want a sidekick. Like I feel like I see them more as like they're filling a hole.
Say filling a hole one more time.
Filling a hole.
Okay.
Now say it a little more sensual.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Wait a minute.
Do the ASMR. Do that.
They fill a hole. You asked for this.
I did.
I did.
I do not regret it.
But those are
filling a hole. Filling a hole.
those are my thoughts on how sidekicks fill holes. Erica, what are yours?
Well, I'm going to take a left turn, because we have talked about like sidekicks in that way. I'm going to talk about them used as, I guess, like sacrifice. So, very much so like what people used to do with ducks in Tomb of Horrors or Tomb Annihilation or fill in blank for dungeon crawl full of traps and you don't want to die, so you go buy a bunch of chickens or ducks or whatever the farm animal is that you feel comfortable sending to the slaughter. Because before the podcast, that was why I kind of asked, like, are we talking about hirelings here? Or what are we talking about? And you had said anybody who kind of comes with the party to aid them. So, I've seen players, especially in those kind of more dungeon crawl focused, using hirelings as sacrifices to help them avoid the traps and get their way through, which is a very much of more old school style of play versus filling the hole like Sparks likes to, and that's in the party. So mine, I guess I'm going to talk more about the sacrificial use of them. So, when I ran Crypt of the Devil Lich for Dungeon Crawl Classic, we did have a hole in our party, and they did hire someone to fill it for them who happened to be a cleric, because no one ever wants to be a cleric. It seems to be a thing. I think even Baldur's Gate, they said the least played class is a cleric, which I think is funny, because it's like even in video games this rings true. But I've saw with my DCC group when we did Crypt of the Devil Lich, they did a hireling for a cleric, and then they also were like, can we get some dogs? And it wasn't because they wanted to sacrifice the dogs. It was more because they wanted to use them to sniff stuff out. And so I was like, yeah, that's fine. You can buy some dogs, or, and they kind of spent the money. They got them a person, they got them some animals, and they went about it that way. And then I saw when we did a play test for our Chambers of Agony, Foxfire was creating, I think either you creating monkeys or you had monkeys.
No, my character sheet had a bunch of monkeys on it.
Monkeys, yeah, and was just chunking them into traps and as a way to lure enemies and distract them. It's a great way to distract a zombie. Chuck a monkey at it and let the monkey run off, and the zombie goes the other way, and you turn the corner and you're good.
The best part was the monkeys did more damage than I did.
Yeah, they really did. So I think that there's so many different ways that you can whether hire or buy PCs that end up being your DM to run. I ended up running a form of a PC with my DCC group, not really because I wanted to. It was more of like they got a magical item that forced my hand to voice almost like a spirit, and that they would talk to for advice. And like, we were talking about, that could be even, a sidekick. If you get a magical item that is sentient and it ends up being there constantly and it helps the party, how do you deal with that as a DM and as a player? There's a lot. I feel like these the two topics just go really hand in hand to one another. But I think if as long as it's done well and it's done responsibly, I think PC or Sidekick, as long as you do it, because I mean, if you do a hireling for DCC, it costs a lot of money to get somebody who's powerful. And I feel like that I felt more comfortable with more of the 5e route that uses sidekicks. It's like you just recruit them. And, they could be any level that, your DM wants to create them at or the party wants them to be. In DCC, you have to pay. You have to pay them for their days. Like the, quote unquote adventurer's 8-hour workday. Yeah, you pay them for that. And if you don't pay them, they go away. And I feel like that would be an interesting thing to add to sidekicks in 5th edition, where money usually is given out, like, very readily available, a lot of gold. Why aren't the sidekicks making any money?
I think with that statement, it depends on the sidekick, because number one, I agree with you that sidekicks can be dogs, monkeys, whatever. So you don't really pay a dog.
No.
You could pay for a dog.
I'm talking about like Sheila. Like, Sheila was with y'all because y'all saved her, and she felt indebted to you.
Exactly.
But like a cleric to fill a need.
Again, what I was saying, that's exactly what I was saying, though. It just depends on the situation. If you have a sidekick that's with you for a reason, like Sheila, she was indebted to us, then I think it's okay. But barring that, then yes, absolutely. If you're hiring somebody, there needs to be a system in place where they're paying the person, because otherwise, if the person was only there for gold in the beginning, why are they there?
Yeah. I've seen in some games where it's like, oh, well, you have a sidekick because you need a wizard, but the sidekick never gets compensation. They're just kind of like a bot that follows around the party.
Yeah. So how I'm doing it in my current campaign, when the party needs some extra healing, because every now and again they decide to go into an area that I know is going to be dangerous, and so I'm like, here's an extra healer, just in case. And the way I deal with that is they're all part of the same guild. So that healer is assigned to go with them and gets paid from the guild, because they're all part of the same thing. And that's how I deal with that aspect. But at the end of the mission, that healer goes away and goes and does another thing. But yes, I do think, like you said, a human hireling that's filling a niche that the party's, I will say that the party actively seeks out, needs to be compensated. But if it's just something that the DM thinks they need and gives to them of their own volition, then I do not think the party should be punished by having to pay. Because if they don't ask for it, then you're forcing them to pay somebody who they didn't want. That's my thought on that.
That makes sense.
So my thoughts on sidekicks are very similar to my thoughts on DMPCs. There is a right way to do them, and there is a wrong way to do them. So similarly to the DMPCs, if there's not a need for the sidekick and they're just kind of there and there's not a need, but get rid of them. Don't have them. Like, unless the player's looking for them, don't have them. But I have a love-hate relationship with sidekicks in particular, because I've run game before where the players try to pick up every single animal and every single NPC they possibly can. In that campaign, I had somebody with a guard drake, a baby black dragon, what else did they have? They had somebody else had a wolf. Somebody else had a raven. And they legitimately tried to pick up every last thing that they could. They tried to pick up an enemy kobold who was begging them to spare its life. And I'm just like, you guys don't need more. You don't need more. I already can't keep track of all the things you have in the middle of battle. You don't need more. But they continually tried to get more.
At that point, if they're picking all those things up, that turns into, okay, here you go. That is yours now, like how rangers do with their beast. That is your thing to control. If you miss it in combat, that's not my problem. That's your problem.
Frankly,
I'm not running this.
Yeah, frankly, I just started making the DC to actually get the things so high that most of them could not get it.
Yeah, you make the unkillable NPC.
Yeah, and like the guard drake, I made that like a DC 25, and the player got very lucky. They got a nat 20, and they had enough of a bonus to get it.
Damn.
Yeah.
When you go, it could cast shield. Oh no.
But barring you having players that collect everything under the sun, sidekicks can be really fun. Like I've had a pseudo dragon as a little sidekick that didn't do much in battle, but every now and again I would have it go do something. Like scout out to see if it was dangerous or something along those lines. You can also have what I would consider a sidekick that's not actually a sidekick, because another one that I had was a mimic that was a tamed mimic that was essentially just a better bag of holding. And those are fun. Or you can have somebody who's literally just there to heal, like Sheila, who you can very easily forget about her and just pops out when it's needed. But it's so one thing that's kind of dangerous with sidekicks, though, is if the players keep having them around, it's very, very easy for them to become DMPCs, which, again, is not necessarily bad, because some DMPCs are very much loved, like the one I talked about. We all loved Zagreus, and he is still to this day a very beloved and memorable character. But it's very easy for the DM to fall in that hole of, well, I'm just going to make them more and more powerful, and they can essentially kind of get power hungry in a way. It's very easy to do that. So at the end of the day, just be very careful with your sidekicks, because it is a slippery slope if you're not careful.
Or you become sadistic and you go, they love them now. Time to rip it away.
Oh, that's what that DM did. He killed 2 of the DMPCs. One, we went to Pandemonium to get back. And the other, well, he had magic BS and came back after like a month in game.
Well, does anybody else have anything on sidekicks? We're on to the last topic, which is Urkas.
Gods. How do you use them? How do you roleplay as them? Do you allow players to interact with them? I wanted to focus more on the using them in a way that they do interact with the PCs and how you kind of deal with that. I mean, if you want to talk about anything else, then that's fine. Like about gods in general, you go right ahead. But I was just more going to focus on that. I haven't ever done any role play with a god in DCC, or any type of like patron. I've only done it with 5e, and I've only, as a DM, done it once with one god, or I guess multiple gods in that campaign. Multiple gods, the players interacted with them, but it was all due to the nature of the campaign. Because the idea behind the campaign was I asked everybody at the table, like, what's something that you as a player have always wanted to experience? And, try to build a campaign around what my players wanted to experience. And and I asked myself what I wanted to do as a DM, and I've never played in a game where people really played a lot with gods besides Sparks. I think yours was the first campaign that I actually had a player who interacted with gods, but most of them were bad gods. Or avatars of a bad god, right? Not Sparks, I'm sorry, Fox.
Yeah, I
I
was
was about to
confused.
say,
I
I
was
was
like,
like,
when did
Yeah,
Sparks
sorry.
run a game like that?
Sorry, no, I think that was the first one that I had as a player ever interacted with gods. And I thought it was neat, and I was like, I kind of want to do that with mine too.
we in
So,
that game when we did fake Gen Con? Because that one we
and
fought a god.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
Fox?
Fox's
I
one
also ran
shot.
that. Yeah, I also
Yeah,
ran that too.
yeah, we fought them. We didn't really like role play a lot with them. I don't remember.
No, we role
that.
played with a few because we had met a few along the way.
You met.
That's right.
I
Yeah,
think you just
Yeah.
met one along the way.
yeah.
And the
we
one
met
shot. I
along
don't
the
remember.
way.
That was 4 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't even
A
remember
long
what I
time
wrote.
ago.
Fake
I
Gen
literally
Con.
just remember I want to do something with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I can't do
Yes,
everything
yep.
I want to do, so I'm just going to condense it down into y'all deal with death and pestilence.
I know for me, when I did my role playing as different gods, I tried to very much following suit of what you do with most NPCs, making it to where, they do have their own personalities, of course, and making sure that their locations or layers, if the players are entering into something like that, is appropriate for their aesthetic. But, using I feel like having gods kind of pop in and out. I like that in a campaign. Where it because they are providing if you're playing, 5e and you have a cleric, well, that's where most, it's coming from most of the time, depending on what your cleric is and how it all works. It's coming from them. So if they're powering all these people with magic, why aren't they interacting with them? So, what about y'all? Do y'all like it as a player to have the opportunity to RP with gods, or as a DM to use gods to RP?
For the most part, I like it. It depends on how it's done and depends on the situation. The way I look at it, gods are very busy beings, and even though they know what all of their followers are saying when they pray to them, is the way I take it, they have other things that they have to do. So they're not always able to interact with the people that are worshiping them. And they have to pick and choose who they interact with when. And they're not typically going to interact unless they have a reason to do so. So as a great example, Erica, in your campaign, we dealt with a couple of gods. One of them being the Raven Queen, whose circle is, if I'm not mistaken, death. And we dealt with that because the entity that we were, like our BBEG, was messing with her sphere. I won't give more details than that. But it made sense for her to become a part of the campaign because someone was stepping on her toes. Similarly, in the current game I'm running, there are currently 3 gods that are in play because something is disrupting the natural order. One of them is a Monitor, because that's who our cleric worships, and he's not liking what he's seeing. One of them is... I brought Striga in because it was fun, and she is the god of death in that campaign. And one is the Traveler, and because in my world, that Traveler is the god of time and change. So he's basically the one that saw, oh, bad stuff coming. Let me put some bugs in people's ear so bad thing doesn't happen. And the bad thing that's going to happen is going to mess with the Spear of Death, so that's why Striga's involved. And Amanator, being a justice god, obviously doesn't want the bad thing to happen either, and plus that is also, again, the cleric's god. And over the course of the game, some of the players also have begun to worship those gods for various reasons. And so I give them the occasional chance to interact. Usually it's a roll. Are you praying to them? Great. Roll me, and you need to roll low. You've prayed to your god for 6 hours, then you just automatically, yes, they tell you something. And I've done this in different ways. Most recently, I gave them all visions from their individual gods they were praying to. The 3 that are praying to gods. And they all basically showed them, this is the bad thing that's coming, stop it. And that's how I've done it. And when I roleplay them, I try to stick as close to the lore as possible. So I see Amanator being basically this uptight, very just, like, do it this way because this is the just way to do it. It's cut and dry, it's black and white. That's how I play him. And then I have the Traveler, who I've always seen as this enigmatic character who seems very neutral, but will subtly do things to push his own agenda. And that's how I very much try to play him. He's always this silly, carefree seeming character when he's been interacted with. The last one, I just have free liberty because she's literally just my character.
Sure.
But that's generally how I've always tried to portray the gods, is whatever their alignment is and whatever they like and don't like in lore, I stick as close as I can to that.
I would say the games that I have played in where gods were prevalent have all been very different. So, like, one game I played in, the gods were, they were kind of takes on, like, 5th edition gods, and then there were gods that, like, were brought in just because it was a homebrew game, and, like, they really took in, like, inspiration from where we had. I remember I was a bard, and I was like, I'm gonna dip into cleric for some reason. I don't remember why. This was 4 or 5 years ago. But, like, it was one of those, like, I was like, well, I'm gonna dip into it because it kind of worked with the character, like, got this god or whatever. Turns out they were, like, the father of the big bad that we were fighting, and I was like, haha, peace, bye, not dealing with you. And, like, as, like, we, like, moved on in that game, like, the gods were, like, that particular god that we were gonna fight against became very prevalent in the game. So, like, tried to find every single one of our characters because we were of the original group and tried to kill all of us off so that way you had nobody to fight against him. And by towards the end of that game, like, we had conversations with some gods. I did. I had conversations with my god. The way that we did legend lore was really interesting because usually whenever you do legend lore, it's just, it comes to you. But since I was part cleric, the DM was like, well, you go into this legend lore and, like, you're doing whatever you're doing in the material plane, but your consciousness goes up into where your god is at, and they give you the information that you need instead of you just getting it through arcane ways, which I thought was pretty cool. So, and, like, the way that he played, because I think I don't remember what god she ended up worshiping. Oh, it was Ishtar. We had brought in like a Mesopotamian god into it because it was, like, super cool, and I was like, that's the god that I want. And I was really into Fate Grand Order at the time. It's an anime that's all about, like, they come out with a season that was, like, Mesopotamia themed, and it was, like, all these gods, like, that we know in real life. like through history had become like players in the game. So I was like, okay, cool. I want that god because she was really cool. And I was like, yeah. So ended up becoming her. I think it just depends. I think it depends on the game. When Erica's game, whenever we had like the Raven Queen and the other one, it was like it didn't apply to everybody like that. Like it was just the gods are talking to, but it was still enough there that it was like we were all kind of in it to win it, especially by the end of that campaign. Any of us could have become a god, just depending on who got the final hit. Striga was just lucky. I got killed instantly and told to kill all the other people in my party. But did I have fun because I'm devious and a god told me to do it? Fuck yes, I did.
I still find it hilarious that the person who actually became a god was the person who didn't
who didn't want to become a god.
Didn't like death, and then she almost became a second god.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah.
You know,
and we continued.
Yeah.
I played a whole
Older.
avatar.
Each of us have become a god in a game.
Yeah.
Because Erica, you became the god of pestilence. And Ashley in Fox's one shot, I became a god in that game. And then Fox, you became a god in Erica's game.
I had the chance to become a god in another game too.
We run a game where we play as the gods that we are.
Ooh, that would be fun.
The god game.
The way I picture it is Striga is just overworked, so she's just always tired now.
Oh.
But judging them souls, man, it's hard.
She's still cleaning up from what the other dude did.
Yeah, but I think if you're gonna role play a god, like you need to, like you said, Erica, stick to their aesthetics. Like I feel like having an area that is gonna be about their that is their kind of aesthetic and how they were and like how they are, and kind of knowing their personality, how they would react to mortals is one of those like really important things. Because not every god is going to react the same way to a mortal that everybody else will. So you got to kind of like think about that. And you got to think about, well, is this evil god just going to walk up to one of them and chat to one of the mortals? Probably not. So I don't know. I think gods are an interesting thing to add into a game. I just feel like you have to do them correctly for it to work properly and not just be like, well, fuck my life. They're just going to instantly point at me and I'm going to die. So.
I mean, on that note, I would recommend if you're running a god, this is the way I do it. The reason I have my gods not directly deal with whatever the thing is, just throwing this out there, is because that if the god actually steps foot, like if they actually come into the material, it causes just their mere presence, regardless of which god it is, causes disasters in the world. This is the lore behind me personally, and I think this is an actual lore, but I'm not 100%. I play it out that way because you will have players be like, well, why don't the gods just fix it if they want us to fix it? That's why, because they literally can't without causing a bigger issue.
It's like an avatar is what the best way they represent themselves in an avatar on the material plane to
just in a weekend
keep that. Yeah, to keep that from happening. I know when I ran the Raven Queen, what you actually interacted with was an avatar for her, and the only time I actually took her a little bit farther was when she took you after you died, and she took you to the other plane of existence, and you could be in her presence, and she was a little different. Not a big difference, but there is a little difference in the way she presented. I like that you talked about like RPing gods to the point to where it's like they have shit to do, that makes sense. Like they're not always going to be there to answer you. And so if you are RPing a god as a DM and somebody does pray, like you were saying, they pray, but they don't make that roll where the god actually would give them a verbal response. Something as simple as like, let's say it is the Raven Queen because we've been talking about her a lot. You know, a feather floats down and of a raven and lands on your lap. You know, like she hears you, she's there, but she's just not available at this time. Like the away message is up, on her
Yeah.
AOL account for all of the
She's on
millennials
Do
out
Not
there.
Disturb on
Yeah,
Teams
she's
right
on.
now.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Like she's out of the office, and you're gonna get the auto message. So
or
maybe you
she's in
should
a
check back
meeting.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
That is
Um,
actually a really good thing to bring up because I have seen people that have played cleric specifically get a little discouraged when
Yeah.
they're constantly praying and their god's not answering. So
Yeah.
I have also done similar things in my game where if they're just not hitting the rolls, depending on what they're doing, I'll let them know your god is smiling at you.
I think
get the sense that they heard you.
I think because having that role, because with that is if like they roll so many times, I feel like the range needs to change. Because it's like you said, they get discouraged because they're not hitting their rolls. And so it's like, okay, if they failed so many times, and it could be a great RP session too, because if they're getting discouraged in game and they're like, why are you not speaking to me? Like I've prayed to you so long, like, and you are just ignoring me. It can test their faith.
See, that's another thing I do, me personally. If they pray a lot and they pray consistently, and I'm talking every single session, they are verbally telling me, I am praying to my God, and they adhere to what the God says, then I do change the DC. For example, like I said, I had a cleric that decided they were going to pray for 6 hours in game. Like it encompassed their downtime as well as game time.
Yeah.
I felt like them praying for 6 hours was just an automatic response rather than a roll.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, like you were saying, Sparks, it would be a good opportunity. I know in DCC there's a mechanic, it's called disapproval. If you fail to cast, then instead of your god, if you're a cleric and you say you try to cast a spell and you fail, then it's a disapproval rating, right? Instead of a nat 1, now you nat failure at 2, nat failure at 3. So there's a cost of you channeling your god and you just not being able to harness their power in DCC. And that's one thing I do like about that system versus 5e, where it's more like your god gives you so much power a day. We call them spell slots. That you can use. Kind of a thing. I feel like the praying thing, I know when I've only played a cleric in a campaign that I really liked, that I felt like she was someone that player wise I really put a lot of effort into, and we were actually in an urban setting, and I actually had a shrine set up because we actually had a home, and I would go in that room every day, and I started my day. Like, I would tell the DM, I kneel down at the shrine that I have made, and I pray till a martyr. And before I start my prayer, I have someone there because my mom was present. My character's mom was present, not my mom. My character's mom was present in the game, and I would have her wrap my hands together, because that is with red ribbon, because that's the symbol of a martyr. And so my character would sit there with their hands bound and pray, and then have to break the twine or whatever away after they were done. She always wore like a little red bracelet that was woven, and whenever she wasn't in her shrine, if it was, and she was feeling disconnected or anxious, then she would kind of like fidget with that bracelet like, as a way of almost like if you practice yoga and you have as I'm a yoga teacher, or and if you have your mala, right, and it's your beads, and it's a tactical way of you doing a mantra. I kind of use that with her bracelet. As a DM, I've never had a player really go that extent with a cleric before. If they would, I would do kind of like you said, like lowering the DC, but if they feel disconnected, that's a great opportunity of, well, maybe you need to go on a pilgrimage. Maybe you need to do something that is a service to your god, and you need to tell the people you're questing with, hey guys, like after we're done doing this bounty, I really need to go here because my god is not hearing me, and I've done something, and I need to mend that relationship, because that relationship, in my opinion, is supposed to be the stronger one versus the bond you have with your fellow
Adventurers.
PCs in game.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like when Pike
Critical
leaves
Role?
Vox Machina.
Yep.
Pike leaves. It was mostly because, spoiler alert, Ashley just wasn't available.
was doing The Last of
But
Us.
they utilized that as a story arc for Pike.
Yeah.
And that's just, good utilization of a bad situation, So
I feel
that's
like
how I have used it.
When they added, so in the Mythic Odysseys of Theros, it was their Greek kind of setting that Wizards put out. For every god they have in there, they have a piety chart of like, you do so much, you get extra bonuses. Like if you, like, I know one of them is like a healing god. If you cure like a disease or something in a town, you get to like the highest like piety you can get, and you get extra bonuses. Like your god bestows upon you like a mythical weapon of theirs. Like it's really interesting. I did a one shot based in that, like where all of like it was a level 20 like character game. And I was like, you are the champions of your god. This mythical beast is about to come up out of the ocean and destroy everything. They need you to go fight. And it was like, I gave them those weapons. Cause like, when do you ever get to play a level 20 and you have like everybody praises a god and you get the god weapons basically? Never. So it was like, it was kind of fun. They enjoyed it. And it was like, well, the gods they chose these people to be basically their avatars because they bestowed upon them the weapon that they use. So I thought that was interesting in that book, especially because that one is kind of the closest thing we get to like real life gods, I would say, because they took a lot of inspiration from the Greek gods. So use gods in your games. Just don't make them, they're already OP as it is. Don't make them join your players.
And the piety system is fun though.
Yeah.
And if you do have them join your players, nerf the HE double hockey sticks out of them.
But yeah, and the thing that I liked about what they did in that one is your character doesn't have to be a cleric to worship that god. Anybody can worship them.
Mm-hmm.
And like they kind of had ones that were geared towards different classes too. So it was like everybody kind of had their god they could worship. They wanted to.
Well, I mean, you don't really have to be a cleric to be able to worship a god. I mean, I know when I run game, I let the players choose. Like, if they're devoted to a god, if they pray to that god, that it has a chance of answering them. And I've had a couple that decided to become religious amongst their travels. I had one that had a situation where they were trying to bring someone back whose soul had been taken. So they called upon a god, and the god helped them, and so now they are a devout follower. And then another who had interacted with a follower of another god and started praying to that god, and so that god took them as a follower. And that's a barbarian and a rogue, not a
Yeah.
cleric.
That stigma
We
needs
did,
to just go away.
When we did Scarlet Citadel, our DM used the piety system, but we had a cleric in the party of Kellenvor. And so, which was Kurt's character. I called him Godman because I could never say Kurt's character's name properly. So I just called him Godman because, like, that's all I could. I just got he was getting frustrated because I didn't say it properly. And I was just like, okay, whatever, Godman. And it just stuck. And everybody started calling him that. And I'm sure Kurt appreciated that. And so.
Well, it was a lesson for him to not pick complicated names.
I know, right? Not when I'm around.
I think Kurt also loved when I came and joined that game for one session and I challenged his godly magic because I was a wizard. I was like, your god magic.
And that's the thing. Like, we had a sorcerer. I was an Echo Knight. Kurt was the cleric, and we had an Eldritch Knight as well. And we were earning piety because we were answering the call of Kellenvor, and he was speaking to us through like an avatar, kind of similar to what we had been talking about. And since we were answering his call and doing what he was asking of us, all of us got piety. My personal character didn't really care about the gods. She was like, yeah, they're helpful to have like a cleric around, but who really cares? She wanted to live by her own rules and not have to follow a code, and that's how she looked at them. And then we had a chaos goblin, which he really was a chaos goblin. He was a sorcerer. And, he was earning piety. And so we were getting piety and in this game, and you wouldn't normally. I've never seen anybody give piety to people who weren't clerics. So I thought that was interesting. We didn't really utilize it much, but when there was a moment that one of us decided that was not Godman to call upon Kellenvor because we had earned so much piety with him, he answered. Gods.
Okay, well,
Well,
go
ahead.
No, what is it? I was about to end. You're about to say something else.
I was pretty much going to end. I was just going to tell our audience that we'd love to hear what they think about the topics we covered today. Drop a comment and let us know.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
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 Hey, travelers. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Dice and Dish. We really hope that you enjoyed it and that you give us a like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. And also just subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast network you are listening to on. We hope that you come back and join us on the 26th. Which is going to be the next episode that will come out at 12 p.m. CST. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.